Saddle up your horses.
Pitter patter, let's get at her. It is another episode of the Manely Broncos Podcast, and it is Lance's time to shine, right? That's the name of this episode, and that is because Lance Sanderson is in the house. He's been on Manely before, and he is on the host with Eric Trickle of Dove Valley Deep Divers, right? Did I get that correct?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
So Lance is in the building, and we're here to not only talk about the Denver Broncos and the fact that the Denver Broncos play football again on Friday against the Arizona Cardinals, which is crazy to think about. One, that it's going to be so late. But hey, it's going to be a lot of fun. But also, the Broncos released their first depth chart. That's be probably one of the first things we're going to talk about. But Lance, welcome in the house, man. How's it feel?
Well, first things first, mile high hello, everybody out there in Broncos country is my typical way I jump into the show. But thank you all for having me here. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Brandon, for allowing me to join you here on the Manely Broncos podcast. I appreciate you for having me on. Doing good. Doing really good. If you guys hear some cheeping in the background, I got to apologize. We're raising some chickens right now. If you look over here, there's actually a box that has chickens in my room. But no, doing good, enjoying it, enjoying all the news and updates coming out of Broncos training camp. And this depth chart, that I've got some questions that I think that we can kind of work our way through. How you guys doing today?
I'm doing great. Brandon, you doing well?
Guys, we have actual Broncos football in 2 days. Not meaningful, but actual Broncos football will be played in 2 days. I am so hyped. I'm ready for this. I'm excited. I just realized I'm actually in 4 fantasy football leagues this year. I thought it was only 3. So thanks, Cam, for dragging me into another one. So that's fun. I'm super excited for that too. But now I'm more stressed about that. But let's go. Let's go. Tom Brady.
Well, to make matters worse, I'm also in a fantasy league with Lance. So I have to kick his butt.
Wait. Hold on. What?
Yeah.
You guys are in a league?
Yeah. It's another league that we have. One of, thousands, right? Like that's usually just how it goes.
Every year I tell myself you're only going to do one. And every year I lie to myself.
Right.
That's me. That's me. Every year I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to get roped into any more leagues, especially if they're in money. I've got 2 $50 leagues on Sleeper. I've got the league with Cameron, and I got another private league with a bunch of my buddies here where I live. Like this league that I'm in with Cameron has like Ryan Edwards in it, Mario Vitanzi, Tim Wenz, if you guys know him from Facebook, Twitter, and whatnot. Like it's a like local Denver media league that Tim Wenz threw together. Lots of fun, lots of trash talking, but I'm not looking forward to it all, man. It's too much. It's too damn much. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to the preseason. As I said earlier, like it's it's a late game, especially on the East Coast. It's like 10 o'clock on the East Coast, 8 o'clock on the mountain side of things. So for even the people on Mountainside, they finally get to embrace exactly the problems that it is for a late game, on the side of the East Coast. Like they can actually say that they're going to brace it again. Actually, even it'll be like the first time that, people, I should say, will be bracing a game that actually is going to be played around like 8 o'clock. Because I remember the Monday Night Football double features of how right? Because I think it was a couple years back where they did the Raiders. And they played it at like, what is it, like 8:20 or something like that. And it would get over with like almost close to midnight.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it's on a Friday.
It's
a bit better, but
absolutely.
So comments are rolling in. We have Ray in the house. I'm excited to have Ray in the building. One of our favorite peeps. I'm sure you've seen him, of course, on your show. Clayton is in the house. We've got Clayton in the building. We've also got the bald man. We've got Glenn Hauser in the building.
Just gonna let Cam call you that?
I mean, we do it all the time. Yeah. So, and Glenn says, thanks for feeling our pain in terms of the East Coast.
Oh, is he on the East Coast? Oh
Yeah.
God, I'm sorry.
All right, guys, you ready to? Do you want to let you guys ready to dive into our biggest topic of the day, since that's like the biggest thing first before we dive into actually talking about the first preseason game, which is against the Cardinals. You guys ready to talk about it?
I'm here for this. I'm here for anything,
Right.
whichever direction you want to go into. I mean, I've got a couple things up on milehighhuddle.com I'd like to plug, but if we want to talk the depth chart and everything, I'm here for whatever.
I figured we save your articles and everything, or if the time comes where a particular player happens and that's the moment you shoot your article of what's going to be coming. My power to you, my friend. So let's do it. All right. So the Broncos depth chart. This is the Broncos depth chart, the 2023 first official, or should we say unofficial, depth chart.
As the league commissioner, I approve. Anyway, what?
It's the 2023 Denver Broncos depth chart. So,
preseason depth chart. Let me just throw that in there.
Yeah. So here it is as follows. The starters: wide receiver Jerry Jeudy, left tackle Garrett Bowles, left guard Ben Powers, center Lloyd Cushenberry, right guard Quinn Miners, right tackle Mike McGlinchey, who is expected to be back in, I would say,
he's expected to miss 2 to 3 weeks.
Yeah, so I would imagine he's going to be maybe just another week or so after that.
In time for beginning of the season.
Tight end, not Greg Dulcich at tight end 1, but the new guy they traded for from the Saints, Adam Trotman at tight end 1, and then Cortland Sutton, and the cyborg and super soldier himself, Javonte Williams at running back 1, Michael Burton, and of course Russell Wilson at quarterback. Then on the defensive front, there is another surprise on this as well. So just a forewarning. Zach Allen at defensive end. Nose tackle is DJ Jones. Defensive end, and this is the surprise, is Jonathan Harris. And then Frank Clark, and then Randy Gregory at the will linebacker, Frank Clark at the Sam linebacker, Josie Jewell and Alex Singleton manning the 2 inside linebacker spots. Pat Surtain, the cornerback number 1, is out there at corner. Damari Mathis is cornerback 2. And then you have K'Wan Williams at nickelback. And interestingly enough, at the right safety spot, they actually have Caden Stearns and Kareem Jackson. Not like like an or whatever, but they have Kareem Jackson and Caden Stearns, and then Justin Simmons, followed by, and then now going back to, of course, the special teams. You have Elliott Fry, Brett Maher on place kicking and kickoff. Riley Dixon is all by himself. And then you have the long snapper is Mitchell Fabroni. Don't be a Fabroni.
Fabroni.
That's okay.
There's only one R in there. Fabroni, that's his name now. Fabroni.
It sounds weird.
Fabroni.
All right, Cam, stop being a jabroni. His name is Fabroni, okay?
Oh. That's right. And then on Marvin Mims wins at least in the initial overreaction, if you will, the kickoff and punt returns duties right now, and he is the kickoff returner and punt returner. So that's the starters, and then we can kind of dive into it ourselves, gentlemen. But
so
yeah,
right off the bat here,
yeah,
there's some things that are really easy to overreact to. They're just like bait. And then there's some things that are like, oh shit, like some actual eyebrow raisers. And I think obviously the number one place and I think this has both. This has a easy to overreact and is tight end. I mean, Adam Troutman. It's easy to overreact to it because like you would expect that Greg Dulcich is going into it being the listed as the starter. It's
right.
not. This isn't too surprising. I mean, Adam Troutman knows the system. He came from New Orleans. He's familiar with Sean Payton. He's the veteran pretty much in the room. Chris Manhertz, I mean, he's there to block. Greg Dulcich is coming off of being a rookie. Like, I don't even know if I would go off of, like, if you can't look at this and think, oh, that means Adam Troutman's going to like get more snaps and Greg Dulcich. Like, that's not even close. They're going to do different things in the offense. The thing that really is that is eyebrow raising to me is like Albert Okwuegbunam is back in the doghouse. Apparently, like, what is this man doing?
Yeah, it isn't just that. Like, he's in the doghouse. He's like, it almost feels like he's in the corner and he's just shaking.
He's Squidward in the meme where Squidward's looking outside and Patrick and SpongeBob are walking by having fun.
Yeah,
Albert O is Squidward.
What about you, Lance? What about you?
So to me, I don't think that this is necessarily a surprise, to tell you the truth, because while Greg Dulcich is the one that everyone's super excited about, you've got to admit that they went out and traded for Adam Troutman in the draft. They brought him in because he's familiar with Sean Payton's system. He's also a much better blocker than what Greg Dulcich is, and he offers the ability to, be at least a receiving threat in the passing game. So I put this out a little while ago. Kind of a hot take thing for me, but not really. Like, it's just like a more bold prediction. Like, Greg Dulcich is probably going to lead this team in touchdown receptions. Let's just be honest here. He has the ability to do that in the red zone, the catch radius, the receiving ability that he brings. But Adam Troutman's probably going to lead this team in snaps playing the tight end position because he has that blocking ability. Him and Chris Manhertz are probably going to be the two first tight ends on the field, especially when this Broncos team wants to run the football, which seems like that's going to be the primary focus of this offense. So well, I don't think that this depth chart means everything.
Right.
It does kind of give you at least an idea of what this team is going to look like. Dulcich is going to be on the field a lot when they want to run single tight end sets, especially if they're going to be throwing the football. But Troutman's going to be the guy that's going to be out there the majority of the time because of that blocking ability. He makes the offense more multiple and harder to read. And going back to what I've heard from a bunch of different guys that are at camp every single day, like, when Greg Dulcich is on the field, it's a passing play. It's almost as bad as Albert Okwuegbunam last year. Like, when Greg Dulcich is on the field, they're throwing the football. When Troutman's on the field, you don't know if they're actually going to run to his side or if they're going to throw play act. You have no idea what's actually going to come out of the offense. So again, I don't think it means much, but it does kind of offer a little bit of a tell of the direction they're going to be moving in going forward.
So that's interesting, because I was kind of going into this thinking that they were, I mean, I definitely knew Adam Troutman was going to be involved. Like, that doesn't surprise me, but I just figured it would be more of like maybe not a 50-50 split, but like a closer share split. And even if that means that they do more two tight end, which wouldn't be surprising. I mean, they can still do that, but having just like finding a ways to get Greg Dulcich involved, because he seems like he is they're at least wanting to have him be somewhat of a focal point. And maybe that even means, like, is he athletic enough to put him, like, use him as like big slot? I don't know. That'd be interesting. Probably not, but that's interesting to me. But like, just the fact that you're thinking, oh, Troutman's going to by far lead them in snaps and Greg Dulcich is going to come in when he's needed. I feel like they had to throw some wrinkle in there so that people can't just see, oh, Greg Dulcich, it's a pass play.
Right. Well, but I was just going to say, I was just going to say, Sean Payton actually even mentioned some of the along the lines of what you had mentioned, Lance, which was, this is, I would say, roughly is exact what I think it was Cliss that tweeted it. But he said, one thing that's interesting about this tight end group is there's some clear roles that you can see, strengths and weaknesses for those players. And I think that goes into everything that with Dulcich being tight end too. So, I mean, like, he definitely probably could be a tight end one, for this team. But I also think that we've had this conversation before, or even your bold take, Lance, about him possibly leading the team in touchdowns. It's something that, I've mentioned before, that this was during the Tim Patrick injury, like before the Tim Patrick injury. Like, I don't think it's out of the question that Dulcich is the leader in touchdowns. I don't know, where the current standing of that is, but with the fact that that Dulcich is tight end too, I think shows you that, there's the possibility that they are hoping to have some, players fill that Tim Patrick role. One, of course, and it seems like that's all been confirmed on this depth chart, is Brandon Johnson. Because Brandon Johnson's one of those other takeaways in that sense where you have Marvin Mims and Brandon Johnson right behind Cortland Sutton. And I think that that basically would almost confirm that he's going to be ending up, basically in that Tim Patrick type role from a wide receiver perspective. But we know that Greg Dulcich can possibly be that tight end, as we alluded to, like a guy that you can spread out wide and use in those certain situations. So that was, I think, my initial takeaway. And I'm with you, Lance, when you mentioned that to not be so surprised if we were to ever see Greg Dulcich at number 2, like the moment that Adam Troutman came here, because of the fact of Troutman's familiarity and everything he has with Peyton.
Yeah, that really doesn't surprise me at all. I think you'll see this change. So and I know we're not really talking about the preseason game yet, but from what we've seen with Jaleel McLaughlin, and he's like at the top of my list for guys I want to see in preseason. He's basically every day in camp, like every single day in camp. And this, Cam and I can confirm this. We saw this on Saturday. He just rips a big run. Like, I don't think I've seen a report from camp where they're like on a day where he didn't have some huge, 40-yard gain or whatever. So he's apparently killing it. That'll be fun to watch. But he is a bit like further back than I kind of thought he would be. I mean, it kind of makes sense. He's obviously very young. He's rookie, but I think you could see this kind of change a little bit. The one thing that also kind of surprised me, well, not really, it doesn't surprise me, but it's interesting, is like, again, at camp, first of all, we saw a lot of special teams work. Like the day we were there, I think it was maybe like 50% of practice was the teams. So that clearly is something that they feel like they need to work on. And we saw a lot of Marvin Mims getting work as the returner, which is interesting. I'm curious to see like how that plays out in the preseason as well. But the reason I say that's, again, not surprising, but just interesting, is like you would also expect Marvin Mims. You kind of like, I don't want to say expect, but I feel like we're hoping that he's going to be involved in this offense. Maybe not. That might not be the right word. I think like he's going to be involved in the offense, right? What we're hoping to see is that he makes at least a meaningful impact there. The reason that I bring this up with him also being the returner is they clearly want to have a way to get him on the field, but it is also slightly risky. I mean, I know, again, injuries can happen pretty much at any point, but if you're anticipating Marvin Mims being a big part of your passing game and you're also putting it back there at kick and punt return, like I don't want to jinx it, but like I would hope that he stays healthy, because you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot a little bit. And like, I'm not saying that, put someone else back there that isn't going to be in the passing game, because you're going to put the best guy back there. Like, that's just how it works. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you kind of saw this with the Chiefs when they had Tyreek Hill returning punts or kicks or whatever he was returning. Mm-hmm. And then they were like, no, we need to have him. Like, we need him. Let's switch it out. Go ahead.
Well, I think the big thing with Marvin Mims is you just don't you need to see him have more of an impact in camp right now. And the biggest thing is he looks like the smoothest punt catcher out there right now. So
for sure,
he's going to be like he's going to be the guy. Like Montrell Washington, as much as I was hyped up for him going into last training camp, I did a big film breakdown for him at Mile High Huddle last season, and I was very excited about the explosive potential of him. Smaller guy, shifty, really saw the field really well. But when it came to being a decision maker at the NFL level, we all saw the disaster that it was last season. And going back to your point, about special teams being the focus, we've got to get the best guys out there. And if you can't make the proper decisions, especially on special teams, especially as a punt returner, they're going to find a guy to replace you. And while it's disappointing to kind of circle back to Mims here, and where like we don't know exactly what his role is going to be within the offense, I still think that his best ability right now in terms of what the Broncos have currently on the roster is him as an explosive and dynamic punt returner. They're going to use him on offense, and I think that it's going to be mostly as like I've said this before on Dove Valley Deep Divers, which, guys, if you are unaware, my show, Dove Valley Deep Divers, goes live every Friday at 6 p.m. on Mile High Huddle's YouTube page. But with Marvin Mims, he's going to be a coverage dictator. He's going to be a guy that you're moving around the line of scrimmage a lot. You're going to use him on jet motion. You're going to use him on orbit motion. You're going to try to utilize the speed that he has as a deep threat to manipulate a safety to, push some off coverage, push some coverage away from like Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy over the middle of the field. So while that may not be a very significant role, it's definitely a very defined role for what he's going to be for this offense moving forward, at least as a rookie. And then we'll see what happens with KJ Hamler if he's able to come back, if the Broncos are able to bring him back. I think that this year for Marvin Mims and KJ Hamler, that's going to be the deciding factor between who moves on this team going forward. And when Mims develops a little bit more, he's going to be a super dynamic threat in this passing attack. Think of like a Lance Moore, a Traquan Smith, even not that they're the same player specifically, but like a Marcus Colston. Working the slot with a deep speed that he has is going to be the role for Marvin Mims moving forward.
I don't disagree with anything you just said. I agree. Like, I don't know if I don't think I explained my thought process there well. But he's by far obviously the best returner. I guess the only to rephrase it slightly, I'm excited to see him used. Mm-hmm. I don't want them to put too much on his shoulders as a rookie of like, we're going to expect him to make like also a big impact in the passing game because we lost depth.
Question for you, Lance. Because this is a hard thing to predict, especially in a rookie season, but what would your best guess be for Mims stats this year? And it's a hard thing to predict, obviously. In terms of, say, a rookie year, you can you can go the shock jock route and say that he'll have 700 yards or 800 yards or whatever, but like it is just so hard to predict. But I do foresee a scenario where, like, say he's finally comfortable in the offense, that he's definitely a more valued contributor for that team, and Russ really trusts him and so on and so forth, to where you see him like the Brandon Cooks, trustworthy aspect of him as a wide receiver. Mm-hmm. But where do you see him right now in year one in terms of stats?
Well, I guess the big question that I have to go into this, and I'll give you a good answer here in a second, but I guess the big question that I want to know is, what is Jerry Jeudy's role in this offense? Is it the Brandon Cooks role where he's working, the deep crosser, deep and shallow crossers, slants, dig routes and stuff like that, working out of the slot? Or is he on the backside of the play on the line of scrimmage? It all depends on what Jerry Jeudy's going to do. But as far as Mims is concerned, I think that you can really look specifically to early Marquez Callaway, honestly, because what Marquez Callaway was able to do in his early seasons in New Orleans with Sean Payton was he was a deep threat guy. Like early on, he would get, 25 to 30 targets a season, maybe catch, 10, 15, 20 balls, something like that, 400 or 500 yards. I think that's honestly the best projection what you can give for what Marvin Mims is going to do this season. But it all depends on what the role is for Jerry Jeudy. If they're going to have him be more of a deep threat, because it's not like Jerry Judy's a slow guy out there. He ran 4.42 at the combine. He's got speed. He can do pretty much anything you want him to. With the loss of Tim Patrick, the loss of KJ Hamler, are they going to have him in the Brandon Cooks role, which opens up a deep threat capability for Marvin Mims, or are they going to have him play? Are they going to have Jerry Jeudy play that Traquan Smith role, moving everything vertically down the field? So it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out. But for me, I think Mims is probably going to be a 25 catch guy maybe this season. Get a couple of touchdowns, 450-ish yards, something like that, and you're going to see a lot of him vertically in the explosive passing game.
And I think this bears mentioning too, and it kind of flies in the face of like some sort of like what I was saying earlier about putting so much on him as a rookie. Mm-hmm. I still believe that, but I don't want that to be misconstrued as like he's a rookie, so he's not going to produce, because it's kind of been, you've seen, there's been those times in the past, I don't know, 6 years. Well, let me rephrase that. Within, like, if you go back like 5 years, 6 years, where, you get a rookie wide receiver and they come in as a rookie and they don't do much, like you don't expect them to do a lot in the offense. But recently you have been getting those rookies coming in that they're kind of like the way that running backs were working, where, like, you get a rookie running back, they come in and they're producing at a high level right away. And you've kind of seen that with wide receivers more recently too. Like, I think the best example specifically last year, or one of the best examples, was like Garrett Wilson with the Jets had 1,100 yards, they had 4 touchdowns, but he definitely came in and made an impact. Drake London made an impact on the Falcons. Like, you've seen these guys come in recently and have great success as rookies. So I still stand by what I said before, but like, I don't want them to put too much on his plate as a rookie, but like, I think he is certainly capable of, like, you can expect him to come in and contribute in a meaningful way for sure. And the reason I don't use someone like, the reason I didn't say Justin Jefferson is my example, because he obviously came in as a rookie and was insane, but he's Justin Jefferson. Like, come on.
Well, and the one thing that is different, obviously, about guys like Garrett Wilson or Drake London is they're different wide receivers. But
absolutely. Totally.
But your point 100% still stands. And but I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think, too, I like the idea of carving a role for him early on. And I like the Marquez Callaway comparison in terms of him as a deep threat, because, like, if you can carve in a role for him early on, that's the best way for him to show out early and show and, produce, at that level early, and to where he can see more reps, going on, like, in season or, whatever. Richie Rich, host of the Wild Wild West, which you can also tune in on Wednesdays around 5:30. He says, I'd be shocked if the Broncos keep Washington. And as much as Washington, friend of the network, Montreal Washington, as much as he's playing really well right now in training camp, he's actually playing really well in camp.
He's a camp early. You feel like every year it's like, Montreal in camp is insane.
Again,
you just don't know. You just don't know. And I think Mario even mentioned this today, that it's a possibility they may carry 7 wide receivers. But, like, I just don't know. Like, if they carry 7 wide receivers, I don't know if that even includes Montreal, because like you've seen guys like Brandon Johnson skyrocket up the depth chart, even probably before the Tim Patrick injury. But you got Tim Patrick, you have Jalen Virgil, sitting there. Taylor Grimes is even pushing hard.
I think Montreal is squarely in that competition bucket of Jalen Virgil, Taylor Grimes, Lil Jordan Humphrey, Michael Bandy, like those guys pushing for a roster spot. Like, above him, like, if you're carrying 7, Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Mims, Johnson, Kendall Hinton, Marquez Callaway, they're all, like, I'm going to say at this point, they're locks. Like, they're obviously making the roster. You take one more of them, it's out of that group I just mentioned.
Well, and I guess the one thing that I would kind of push back on, and this was coming from my partner over on Dove Valley Deep Divers, Eric Trickle, you're talking about guys that saw first team reps just in the past couple of days after Brandon Johnson went down. Taylor Grimes, Marquez Callaway, Kendall Hinton, and I believe it was Jalen Virgil was the other one seeing first team reps out there on the practice field. So that could even point you in even more of a specific direction of just the impact of Taylor Grimes. And I'm going to plug one of my articles here. I just dropped a quote piece from Sean Payton, who gave, I don't want to call it effusive praise. It was short, sweet, and to the point, but he definitely highlighted Taylor Grimes' ability to separate and his high football IQ to understand where the soft spot in zones and understand how to beat man coverage, create separation, and just be a playmaker out there on the field. Well, Montreal Washington, and I like him, don't get me wrong. And came back in and said, don't get me wrong, I really like Washington. I do too. I think that there's a dynamic ability there. But Grimes has seen first team reps where Washington hasn't. He's also seen more reps in the punt return game, at least over practices, according to our guy at Mile High Huddle, Luke Patterson, who's been at practice every single day, saying Grimes has been getting punt return opportunities too. So while Washington is the second guy on the roster right now, they're trying to find new guys to come in to compete with Washington, to compete on the first team offense. And Grimes is one of those guys that just continues to go out there and make a lot of plays. So is that a sign? I guess I want your guys' opinion on that. Is Grimes a guy that's climbing this?
Yeah, and I've heard nothing but good things about Grimes, but that's why I put him in that same bucket of like these guys are all fighting for the same spot, and like Taylor Grimes, I would not be surprised if he beats Tom Montrell. I mean,
and I think the thing for me is Montreal Washington, and again, he's played well at camp, but it's just one of those things like it's going to have to translate to games.
Well,
and I think that for Montreal, it's going to have to fall in line with with what we're seeing right now, which is the Deontay Spencer syndrome, which is he's going to have to contribute on the offense in order for him to really advance and be a part of the team, for the foreseeable future. And I think that, and that's nothing against the guy like the talent level of what Spencer was coming in here, or even Montreal Washington, because they do have the talent to get it, to actually make something on offense and be, a nice little project to work with. The other thing too is like, when you have guys like Taylor Grimes and you have guys like Jalen Virgil, who even got some of that playing time, and Grimes, right? Or even Brandon Johnson, as well as last year, and Kendall Hinton proven to be a pretty Hall of Fame quarterback. Kendall Hinton, getting some of that reliability part of it down last year with Russell Wilson. I mean, he was a reliable wideout last year. So I think that you have to be able to carve a niche out for yourself. And sadly, right now, it looks like the best place where he's made an immediate impact initially right now in camp off the naked eye has been special teams.
Well, and I know we're not necessarily there yet, but Montreal Washington was going to be one of the guys that was going to say is going into the preseason with, I don't know if opportunity is the right word. He's one of the guys that like he needs to show out in preseason if he's going to want to like make a chance, like fight for a roster spot and have a chance to get on the roster. He's one of the guys that's going to have to come out and show something in the preseason to do that. That's kind of what I'm getting at. He was going to be on that list anyway. But like you remember, I mean, you've seen Brandon Johnson, again, limited sample size, couldn't think of the term, go out there and show what he can do actually in a game setting. I think it was against the Cowboys where he had that like deep down the sideline catch, and then I think he had that other touchdown. I don't know, but we've seen him go out there and do it in a game, and I feel like we need to see, like Montreal needs to do that this preseason. He's one of the guys that this is a big preseason for him.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And I think that with Montreal, it's going to be very telling just in this Arizona game coming up here on Friday. Who's first on the field? Is it Grimes or is it Washington? Because I think that those are the two guys that everyone's I don't want to say hyping up, because they keep going out there and making plays and just keep doing what's asked of them in terms of being a part of the offense. But those are the two guys. It really does determine, like Kendall Hinton's a guy that is reliable, and like you said, and I'm glad that you said it, he's a Hall of Fame player, Kendall Hinton.
That's right.
To go out there and what he's going to bring you. The earlier that Grimes or Washington get onto the field in this preseason game, the more telling of which direction the Broncos are going to be going in. And it may not even be the 53-man roster. We're talking practice squad here too. I mean, because Brandon Johnson, low ankle sprain, out 2 to 3 weeks. Kendall Hinton still potentially being able to come back from his pericarditis diagnosis earlier this week. So if you're talking a guy that could potentially even make the lower end of this roster to start the season, you're looking at that guy to be able to be kept around on your practice squad moving forward. And if Washington is the second guy on the field, I don't think that bodes well for his future as a Bronco, maybe even in the NFL, to tell you the truth.
Yep. So as we're moving along on the depth chart, how you doing, KB? I think we already answered this, I believe, in terms of the Mims part of it, and that would be like the deep threat part of this, I would imagine. But do you want to add a little bit more further for KB, Lance?
Well, first things first, shout out to KB. This is Kenny Booker. I was with Mile High Huddle there for a while. Still with Mile High Huddle technically, but haven't seen him around. Joined the Army there for a minute too. But KB jumping in. What's up, dude? Good to see you again. I think that the biggest thing is you're going to see him as a coverage dictator. You're going to see him in motion. You're going to see him try to utilize that speed, open up some stuff vertically for this offense to open up stuff underneath specifically. But honestly, you put him in the slot, make him run a backside post on a play action waggle. Russell Wilson run out to his right side, deep shot over the top. We saw kind of that. It wasn't really that designed play, but similar to something like that with Russell Wilson and Marvin Mims in a preseason, or not preseason, but training camp. 2 days ago? Got him on a 40-yard touchdown. So that's kind of the role that I have for him this season. But I'm excited for year 2. For sure, when we get a little bit more of the clarity of how, what are they going to do with Tim Patrick? What are they going to do with Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy? What they do with KJ Hamler as well? Year 2 for Marvin Mims is going to be very big, and that's the most that I'm excited for is what we do with Marvin Mims in year 2.
Well, Marvin Mims could be that Tyler Lockett-esque role.
Yes,
for
absolutely.
Russell Wilson. Like that's what you can see him do. They're actually very similar size too. Mims is a bit bigger, a bit taller actually, and a little bit bigger hands, I think. But like I think I honestly feel like that's kind of the role we were envisioning when we drafted him, because Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson had like
they were peas in a pod,
otherworldly connection. Like you want a guy, and this is part of like this, and just again, kind of going off of what KB is saying. You were envisioning when you got Hamler with the speed, the moon balls to Hamler. Like you saw people say that all the time
and everything,
before Russ imploded. You saw that all the time going into the season. And obviously that didn't quite work out, but Marvin Mims, similar kind of profile as Tyler Lockett. I think they're looking for that Tyler Lockett, because even when Tim Patrick was playing and healthy, which rip, I'm sorry, man, that still sucks so much. I mean, him and Cortland are very similar players in terms of just like the way that they ball, and they're outside guys that make ridiculous catches over people, and they're huge bodies, and they're not really that Tyler Lockett. I mean, they can get the deep ball, and don't get me wrong, like they can, but Tyler Lockett is like that speedster deep wizard, right? So you kind of hoped that KJ Hamler could do that, but I feel like going into this that they hadn't seen KJ Hamler do it, so they looked at Marvin Mims and Jerry Jeudy. I mean, Jerry Jeudy is kind of like in his own. Jerry Jeudy is in his own stratosphere. Like he's neither of those things. He's like the route running savant. But I wouldn't be surprised if you see that.
So moving on to the other depth chart, as far as the backups, anything that sort of stands out to you? I mean, and again, this is the first unofficial depth chart. So guys like Luke Wattenberg initially, being ahead of Alex Forsythe, I wouldn't necessarily say as an overreaction, because again, like this is the first unofficial depth chart, and where you will start to see more of that movement is, when you see the seconds and the thirds and the fourths, depth charts that are starting to roll in. So I'm not overly surprised by any means as far as, what you see as far as there. I'd say I would just say even for the defensive side of things, there's not really, just as far as the defensive part, like there wasn't anything that is overly shocking even on that side. I think the one thing that is great to see is a guy like a Jaquan McMillan getting some of the love behind Pat Surtain. That was a guy that really made the most of his opportunity really in one game. and it's really carried over nicely. And Brandon and I have talked about it ad nauseum and everything, even over on the 5280 pod. And it's like, so there really isn't anything that is flashy, by any means in terms of the rest of this depth chart.
I'm interested to see Delonte Hood in the preseason too. He's like kind of my other. I don't know if I'd say he's my similar to Montreal, where it's like you need to do something in the preseason.
He flashed.
I want to see him do things in the preseason because he definitely was having a pretty good camp. Him and like Thomas Incoom, who's another. That one's also not insanely surprising, but like him being over Christopher Allen is kind of like, oh, that's something. I mean, Christopher Allen, you didn't really see him do a ton. He was coming back from a couple pretty bad injuries. But then we also gave him like a really huge undrafted signing.
So the big thing with Christopher Allen here is that he's always been fighting injuries. The potential is there for him to be just a spectacular pass rusher. But when you did see him on tape I believe it was 2021 in Alabama, he was hurt, and then right behind him, say what?
I was going to say he was playing with Will Anderson, like opposite Will Anderson.
Yeah, and then who filled in for Christopher Allen after he got hurt? None other than backup linebacker for this Denver Broncos defense, Drew freaking Sanders, rushing off the edge for the Alabama defense. Christopher Allen has had injury concerns going back to 2020. Like there's serious concerns there. He has a lot of talent.
Well, he had back-to-back injury, season-ending injuries.
Yeah, he had I believe it was an ACL tear in there and Achilles injury as well. And check me on that, and don't take it as like the gospel truth, but I know there's like major lower leg injuries as well. And then Drew Sanders came in and showed that he could actually rush the passer off the edge. He wasn't great by any stretch, but he actually showed he could do it. Then he transferred to get away from the Will Anderson effect, play more off the ball at the linebacker position in Arkansas. And there's multiple people that I know in the scouting community that said that he was the number one linebacker in the class, potentially a top 20 pick. Like the Broncos have a steal here in Drew Sanders, but to go to just back to Chris Allen here. Christopher Allen was always a liability in the running game. Going back to his high school tape, he was always a liability in the running game. He just could not play with the strength at the point of attack. And that's why you're seeing Thomas Incoom here. His tape at Central Michigan going against Olu Fashanu was absolutely incredible. And if you guys don't know who Olu Fashanu is, he's tackle number one, potential top 3 overall pick in the 2023 NFL or 2024 NFL draft. Excuse me. This dude is a freak of an athlete. He's coming in at 20 years old as a true junior at Penn State, and he's going to be a monster at left tackle. And Thomas Incoom took him through the freaking woodshed, beat the hell out of him, got 2.5 sacks on him, and then multiple different pressures. Like, this is a crazy kid we're playing with here. And Thomas Incoom, he has the ability to do it.
It's I definitely wasn't I wasn't necessarily surprised because I've been kind of excited about Incoom anyway. Like I'm really excited to see him play. But just it just kind of sucked to see because I really like Christopher Allen too. And when we got him, like he's a good player. Yeah. But I think actually to your point, both of his injury from last year was the same injury that he was handling in college, which was his Lisfranc foot injury. It was just it just was not healed. I don't think he actually tore his ACL. Thankfully, it wasn't any of the ligament horrific Achilles, like those kind of football nightmares. I mean, not that Lisfranc isn't like horrible, but it was the same injury both years, which I mean clearly is not healing.
And thank you for clearing. Thank you for clearing that up too. I do appreciate that. 90% of the stuff I do on shows is like off the top of my head, so I don't have all
it's so hard to remember.
Yeah, ad libs is perfect though.
The only reason I remember it is because it wasn't an ACL or an Achilles because it's different.
I swear it was an ACL. I swear he had an ACL.
He might have also had that. I might be wrong, but I know like last year when they redshirted him was because of the Lisfranc that he was like that. Also was what ended him in college. Yeah. But I'm sure maybe he might have had before that. But I mean, I'm excited. Bottom line, I'm excited to see Thomas Incoom for sure.
Yeah.
But are you guys good to move on? We can talk about the preseason, the actual NFL action that we'll be seeing on Friday. You guys good for moving on?
Let me tell you how I feel about that.
I guess the one
I'm
last.
I'm gonna kick their ass. This is the way I'm feeling.
Perfect.
Sorry, I cut you off, Lance. My bad.
It's all good. I was going to say the one last thing I have to say on this whole thing is Jonathan Harris as a starting defensive end here too. Like that's something that Eric and I have kind of talked about. Is this interior defensive line has some depth issues for sure, and with Jonathan Harris really showing out. I mean, they were excited about Henningsen, they were excited about Awazarike, they were excited about Jonathan Harris, but to see him go out there and show that he actually belongs on an NFL field, which he hasn't done for the last couple of seasons, it's a promising sign for me, at least.
Well, and I was going to say, I like the clip, Brandon. One, it's Von Miller, and, Von Miller is always, holds a close place for, Broncos fans. Obviously, your lone profile picture that you've had for about thousands of years was with Von Miller. And two, the Broncos play the Cardinals. And the Broncos play the Cardinals, and that is his most famous clip where
he did that on purpose.
Yeah, so it's
he said that before the Cardinals game.
Yeah,
where we did kick their. That's the game where he just
wasn't
casually destroys a double team.
Joseph, wasn't that actually with Vance?
Yeah,
it was. Yeah. If I remember correctly, Cortland Sutton threw a toss back touchdown pass. Or caught a toss-back touchdown pass from Emmanuel Sanders. It was one of that way. Throwback touchdown pass. Cortland Sutton laying out to catch the pass. I actually remember that now. In that specific game, and that was the end of Josh Rosen in the NFL.
Oh, Josh Rosen.
I
forgot about Josh.
And speaking of
one.
And speaking of Von Miller, he made one of the most impressive pass rush plays I think I have ever seen. And that's like guys like Aaron Donald and, the likes of that. Like he made a play where he blew up the guard.
The Cardinals game?
In that Cardinals game.
Yeah,
he blew up that. About. Yeah, he blew up that guard and then, basically tackled Rosen and forced the fumble, and that was insane. Like, obviously, you don't think much of it off of the broadcast view, but when you see it in the All-22, it is an insane look.
He basically, bull rushes the guard back, 3 yards, drives into the ground. He's 5 yards away from the quarterback at this point. Gets up and then still runs back and sacks Josh Allen. It's actually insane. Well, the same game, I think actually it was the same game. He also was being double teamed by, I think it was after he'd had that play on the guard. The guard was like, yo, I need help. So it was him and the tackle. I mean, you always need help. It's Von Miller, and it doesn't, and even then it's not going to work. But it was him and the tackle tried to stop him, and he still just destroys them. It's insane.
Yeah. So let's go into the topic at hand, which is the preseason, and let's actually go into the main event topic, which is what we were going to talk about, which was,
and what? Ray, just to answer this, you draft Drake May.
That's if you're in a position to get Drake May.
Well, according to this, we would be.
Right. So as far as the main event, what and this again, this could be a rookie. This could be, I know that you sort of alluded to it a little bit with Montreal Washington, but as a whole, and I know that this preseason, may see some starters play on Friday, some may not play and due to injury or whatever. But as a whole, this what if you were to say for this preseason means more to who? And this is a veteran, this is a rookie, who does it mean more to? If you were to kind of think as far as a preseason, because let's think about it. And I think that's a fair question to always ask every single year. But when you think about it from the perspective of where this team is at currently in its current standing, who does it mean more for?
So I'm going to answer your question with a question and then go into my reasoning why I bring this up. So coming into July, before training camp even started, what was your guys' biggest fear? Cameron, I'll ask you first. What was your biggest fear / concern for this Broncos roster going into this season?
Well, I would say the first big one, obviously, is what was the marriage going to be looking like between Russell Wilson and how will Russ look under Sean Payton? That's like the big one, but non-Russ related.
Yes, that's the big thing, non-Russ related. So excuse me on that.
Yeah, I would just say, as the thing was wearing on, I really didn't have any thoughts per se, but as the thing was wearing on, what is it going to be looking like with Javonte Williams? I'd say that's probably one of the big ones for me, if not the big one.
Okay, Brandon, what do you think?
I have more than one.
What's the number one concern that you have? Because my number one, I'm going to get to here in a second.
What was the number one concern that's not Russ related?
That's not Russell Wilson, Sean Payton related. What's the number one concern you had on this roster coming into training?
On this entire roster, okay. I'm probably going to have to give it to the right tackle position.
Okay.
Because Mike McGlinchey, all the money we paid him, can he stay healthy? Which also he's injured already, but also his pass blocking is not good, and his run blocking is very good. But to pay him that much money and think he's going to suddenly come in and solve the turnstile of a right tackle position that has been horrific for 7 years, I just didn't think he was going to get it done. I mean, I'm hoping he proves me wrong. He's a very good run blocker. He is not a good pass blocker, and that is very concerning.
Yeah,
I'm going to give that the number one, but there's a couple others.
Okay, so the biggest one that I had coming into this offseason was the edge position.
That was the other one.
Plain and simple, the edge position. Like I was all right with them bringing in Mike McGlinchey. I never thought Javonte Williams was going to be as far along in his process as he is now. The fact that they're going to play him in preseason games, from the sound of it, is just insane to me. In fact, I actually have a bet with some people on my show, Dub Valley Deep Divers, where if Javonte Williams starts and takes the first handoff in week 1, I'm changing my Twitter handle to Javonte Williams fan _1. Like legit. I did not think he was going to be. My biggest concern was the edge position. You have Randy Gregory, who has never played a full season. In fact, he's missed more games in his career than he's ever played. Baron Browning coming off of a knee surgery. You have Nick Benito and Jonathan Cooper, who Jonathan Cooper has been decent as a player. He showed really well against as a player last season after they traded Bradley Chubb to the Miami Dolphins, which then turned into Sean Payton. But Nick Benito, I had him as a less than 100 top player in the draft, and they drafted him at number 64 overall. Big concerns there. Then you bring in Frank Clark in the middle of July, who still has to acclimate himself to playing football and into the Vance Joseph defense. After that is Christopher Allen and Thomas Incoom, who we don't know what they are. This
and then there's
was
what
a
does Baron
big
Browning
concern.
Do? Yeah,
exactly. And then Baron Browning's coming off of a knee surgery too. Like, he had off-season arthroscopic knee surgery. He might be out until like week 8, based on what I'm hearing coming from some people I'm talking to. Like that, like this recovery from this surgery is not going well. Like, he might.
Edge was number 2
the
for
4
me.
weeks that they projected. So that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing I want to see out of this team. And plugging an article here, I just wrote an article. It's going to go up on milehighhuddle.com tomorrow, talking about Vance Joseph and Sean Payton giving so much praise to the guys that we needed to see the biggest developments from in Jonathan Cooper and Nick Benito. Those two guys are having massive camps right now.
Yeah,
they are
massive.
They are unblockable coming off the edge. Like, Nick Benito did an up and under with a spin move on Mike McGlinchey and got a sack. Jonathan Cooper is
welcome to my number one fear.
Also showing. This was my number one fear, was the edge depth, the edge concerns overall. And I want to see what these guys are going to look like against other NFL competition. They're out there playing against an offense that's primarily in installs. And now we're going to go against other NFL competition. Nick Benito, Jonathan Cooper, this game right here means so much to me in my evaluation of this team.
You know, and it's funny when you look at especially Nick Benito. Jonathan Cooper, I felt like, was always a player that was really good. Right, but I think at times he was just more about like the inconsistencies at times. But like he was but for all the inconsistencies, he was also one of the more consistent players to a certain extent. But I think for Nick Bonito, the thing that's so fascinating with this year is now you're starting to see the array of moves start to happen this year, which was, if you're thinking about like one of his weaknesses last year, and he was a great speed rusher. He's a fantastic speed rusher. But I think that what was so great about him was this year is you're starting to really, he's really adding a lot to his repertoire as a pass rusher. And I think that that is only going to serve him that much better, going into some of the preseason games, and who knows, maybe, this help with Jared Allen.
Cam and I was going to say it, Cam.
With Jared Allen being in practice, which, by the way,
Jared Allen, half a sack away from tying the NFL record for most sacks in a season.
I was going to say real ones know. I'm sure Lance knows, but I don't know if Brandon knows. But the real ones know that Jared Allen was supposed to be a Denver Bronco. I don't know.
Are you trying to say I'm not a real one?
No, I'm not saying that. We know that you have the memory of a goldfish, though.
Shame on you, bro. I explained.
Yeah, you do have the memory of a goldfish. I'm
just following Coach Lasso's advice.
But yeah,
for real though, I'm the same way. Like, I'm super excited to see Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito. But I was gonna say, I hate you so much, Cam, because you were teeing me up for it, and then you just stole it right down from under me. As I feel like Jared Allen has definitely something to do with that, because you see a lot of the times you'll see teams do this where they take the, well, maybe not even teams. You see a lot of rookie edge players come into the NFL where they're like super athletic, but they don't rush with a plan. They have they don't have a move. They don't do anything other than like, I'm faster than you or I'm stronger than you. You see that a lot. So, the question is always, can they turn into the technique side of things can they develop the technique that they are going to need playing against NFL level offensive linemen, where they can't just be like, well, I'm stronger than you, I'm faster than you, because no, you're not, like 99% of the time. So you have to figure out other ways to win.
Yeah. Right.
And that's the biggest question mark, is do they do that? And it looks like Nick Bonito so far is doing that. So I'm really also excited to see him, because when we drafted him, I was also kind of like, why? Like, there were players at the same position that I would have taken over Nick Bonito that I wanted us to take at that position. And it was, who was that guy? I'll look him up. I can't remember his name. There was like a specific edge rusher I was really into.
Case in point, memory of the goldfish.
I'm sorry. Do you just happen to know 400 people's names in your head?
Well, in Brandon's,
let me just put this in here right now, just to slap back a little bit here. Cam and I went to the PGA Tour Superstore last weekend after Broncos camp. Dude spent 45 minutes getting fitted for a woman's hybrid club. So,
I mean, that was the only club that I was given, and I had no idea it was a women's club, for one. So
sorry, go ahead, Lance.
I'm not even going to touch that. I know we're not bound by FCC.
I told his dad I was going to talk about it on the podcast.
Was it pink? Did it have a pink handle? Brandon, did you not see Cameron, did you not see the pink handle?
Well, I think Big Bird. It was Callaway.
You messed yourself up on that one.
Well, actually, it was the person that was selling, because like it was a Big Bertha. It was a Big Bertha Reva. It was what it was called, and thankfully he never said anything. The guy that was doing the fitting, he never said anything. I was just hitting it and doing quite well with it. But it really wasn't until we were the whole sellout, selling me the club deal, where I got the Big Bertha, and I was like, oh, this is a 6 hybrid with a 30 degree. And I was like, okay, that I can live with that. But then I got the standard, if you will, Big Bertha 6 hybrid, which is fine. I mean, it was like a 27 degree, but I saw the 27 degree. It's like, I've been hitting with a 30. This is weird. And so I went over and I asked the guy the question. He smiled and he goes, yeah, we had you be hit with a ladies club because we didn't have a 60-30 or a 630 in the Big Berthos, and I said, well, can you?
That wasn't
at
the
least,
reason. He was being nice.
Yeah, and so I told him, I said, well, can you at least get the thing from a 27 to at least a 30 or close to a 30? He goes, absolutely. So he organized the degree from like a 27 to a 29. So at least that was
whatever you want.
So what you do is you buy into the fact that you were swinging women's club, buy the women's club, and then beat everybody else in your men's foursome, and
There
just
you
go
go.
beat the hell out of them. Like outdrive them out, whatever. Just go play better and say, I'm using a women's club. I'm that good.
Well,
That is a flex. That would be fun.
But no offense
absolutely
no. No offense to any ladies out there to play golf. I'm terrible at golf. Like I can barely get the ball off the ground. I think I combined like 9 rounds of golf in my entire life. I can hit the holy hell out of a 9-iron. I found that out. But give me anything else, I'm not capable at playing golf.
I think
shout out to everybody that does do well, but yeah, like that would be the ultimate flex. It's like I've got a women's club in my bag, and I'm throwing down on you guys.
And don't get me wrong, this was not even close to the realm of you golf like a woman. Like 80% of the women golfers I know would all kick my ass.
It beat the hell out of me,
and by a lot. And even if I had like a large handicap, so nothing of that. I'm just giving Cam shit. Anyway, I have made a spiral, but it was worth it.
When do we not go down? Lance knows this.
I don't even know what we were talking about.
Oh yeah.
Lance knows this being on the podcast. Like, when do we not go on rabbit holes? Like,
it's insane.
Anyway,
you never
Nick
know.
Benito, I'm a fan. I'm excited. Jonathan Cooper, I was already a fan of his. Like that's part of it for me is like Jonathan Cooper. We've seen him make some flashes. They were only flashes, but you've seen him do some things. Nick Benito was like that big question mark of like, I have no idea. And then we already talked about it, but like does he take the next step that he's going to have to take in his development? And it looks like the answer so far is yes, but I mean, in camp, yes, in camp.
Well, so, and what about you, Lance? Who you mentioned? Did you mention Nick Benito? Is that what you, or was that?
Yeah, that was my big overarching point was like this edge group. The next guy that and this was actually kind of a I don't want to say eye-opening thing to me, but something I wanted to kind of bring to the show here for a different audience. And just quickly, I know that like I'm Mile High Huddle. You guys are predominantly orange. I feel like the fact that we're here doing this show together shows that the media orchestration, it's absolutely beautiful. Why do we have to be competitors? Let's join together, grow our followings to everybody. And thank you all for joining us. Hopefully we get some Mile High Huddle guys in here and some predominantly orange guys to come over to my show. Like, a better media cycle is a media cycle where we're all inclusive and like everybody works together. So that's my big thing. The other thing that I wanted to bring to the show, by the way, is the center position here. Josh Sherman says that he's going to block all of you now. Yes, he will. Actually, he blocked me. He blocked me. He blocked me. He blocked me.
Nicest person on Twitter, and he blocked me.
I'm not blocked.
I wrote an article about Nick Benito doing a film breakdown of him. So last year, I wrote up every single draft pick for the Broncos and did film breakdowns. I was like, this is their strengths, this is their weaknesses, and everything like that. Nick Benito read it, quote tweeted me saying, you have no idea what you're talking about, and then blocked me. So I'm blocked by Nick Benito.
That's how you know you made it.
Right?
Oh, it wasn't. I was going to say it wasn't the other blocking, which was I had no idea I was blocked by Nick Benito. And then come draft time, you try and follow Nick Benito and you're blocked. Now, granted, I don't know if that has to do with me being a Nebraska fan, but I mean, hey.
All right.
There's dozens of you.
All right. So, guys, insider information for everybody out here. I live in Wyoming. Like, if you take the state of Wyoming and draw an X through the middle of it, where the X lands in the middle of the state is where I live. Okay. The wind here blows constantly, like 45 to 50 miles an hour. It blows in Wyoming all the time. And the reason why the wind blows in Wyoming, scientifically proven, is because Nebraska sucks.
I like the daggers that's happening right now. I like it. So yeah,
What you mean to say is you're used to it.
I'm used to it. Exactly. But
I know
yeah,
I'm derailing the show, but it's fun.
No, when has this show never gone off the rails? Probably episode 1.
Whenever you're not here.
I was gonna say probably episode 1. But so I would say for me, like aside from say like the Javonte stuff, as far as like who would need a preseason more, because I think, well, I guess the thing to phrase it is like, I think to Javonte, this is a preseason that would mean more for him in his terms of like recovery. But I think for me, I think the easy answer, and we sort of talked a little bit about it on 5280, but I think the very easy answer would be Alberto Kawibanam. And we touched on him, early, obviously, in the depth chart. But I mean, like, if you're going to be trying to advertise your trade value, which, let's be honest, he doesn't have hardly any trade value. And the best way that he can advertise trade value is in preseason. I would say Okuwebanam is one that this would mean more for in terms of preseason. Now, as far as defensive line or, cornerback, I would say maybe some of those guys like not a Riley Moss, but because he's injured right now. But I mean, I would just say maybe a guy like a Damari Mathis to truly show that he can be solidified as that number 2 corner. Because there will be preseason games where Pastor Tam may not play. And so can he show out to be what's stronger than a cornerback 2? A cornerback 1 in situations where Pastor Ted is not there. And so I think that, if he can be able to show out and prove that he can be that shutdown corner, which I think, that was everything we had envisioned, once Damari Mathis was actually playing really good football, as the season was closing. So I think those are one of the 2, maybe not the tops, but those are the 2 that I would say that kind of come to mind.
Yeah. So how long have we got? How long we got on the show? Can we keep going? We got time. Okay. Brandon, go ahead. I got another one I want to throw in.
I was going to say, I don't think I've said mine yet, and I feel like I might steal yours maybe, and I haven't gone yet. So
we're used to stealing on the show.
Or I don't want you to steal mine. My pick or one of my picks for like who does this mean the most to? And this is a bit of there's a slight asterisk here because it's like how much does he play? Lloyd Cushenberry.
Mm-hmm.
You stole it. I'm here. Let's
go. That's why I wanted to go. I didn't want you to steal mine. I knew it was going to happen. Lloyd Cushenberry, because Lloyd Cushenberry coming into the season is, I mean, you already know how I feel about Mike McGlinchey, but Lloyd Cushenberry has pretty much been the weak link on the offensive line.
And he's had a good camp, by the way.
Going into from last year, and he's had a good camp, but again, I want to see him do it and be consistent and be good in a game setting, because if he can be good, this offensive line can be special. I'm going to say it. Garrett Bowles looks like he's getting back to good Garrett Bowles form. Ben Powers is looking like the best signing we've made, which was already the case. Lloyd Cushenberry, question mark. Quinn Miners could be a top 5 guard in the NFL. Mike McGlinchey, I mean, he's a good right tackle. He's not great. He's a good run blocker. We've already talked about him. But Lloyd Cushenberry is who knows? You don't know. Like, people were, when we drafted Alex Forsythe, everyone was like, which, I mean, again, I like Alex Forsythe. I like the draft pick. I'm not saying this is bad, but I know when we drafted him, and me even personally was like, could he beat out Lloyd Cushenberry? Like, that's how bad Lloyd Cushenberry had been.
Yeah.
And he's kind of been hanging on by a thread, and I want to see him pull himself up the life raft here and get back on the boat, because it's pulling out of port.
So my big thing, and y'all can hate me if you want to, I wrote a fairly controversial piece at milehighhuddle.com a couple weeks ago. The fallout of drafting Pat Surtain over Justin Fields. And I went through using some source information and got a lot of very good feedback from some people. But the fallout of drafting Pat Surtain over Justin Fields also includes the failures of the Broncos to be able to trade up to improve the center position. I know for a fact the Broncos were trying to trade up for John Michael Schmitz last season. I know for a fact they were trying to trade up for Joe Tippmann this last season. I know for a fact they were trying to trade up for Ricky Stromberg this last offseason. Know that for a fact. They came and weren't able to do any of those things. They were also trying to trade up. They were also trying to trade up to get Matt Hennessy from Boston College before they drafted Lloyd Cushenberry back in 2019. Know that for a fact. We're talking about they didn't want Lloyd Cushenberry from the fact that they drafted him and then moving on from him multiple different times. I also know that they had a second round grade on Alex Forsyth, and he just continued to keep falling and falling and falling because he was injured in the pre-draft process. They were trying to get a center to upgrade over Lloyd Cushenberry. Now, and some speculation.
Also, it's gotta hurt too. Seeing the Chiefs take a guy in Creed Humphrey in the second round in 2021 turn into the best center in the NFL.
Yep.
Oh,
And
I hate it here.
So to go back to Alex Forsyth, and I liked Alex Forsyth as a player. I had him as a top 150 player on my board, but I know for a fact Emery Hunt from CBS Sports, who's a widely respected player, draft scout, actually worked within the league. Joe Marino, Kyle Krabs, Duke Manyweather, who was the offensive line coach at Offensive Line Masterminds, said that Alex Forsyth was the best center in this class coming out of this season. If he wasn't injured and was able to participate in the pre-draft process, he would have been a top 64 pick. The fact that Alex Forsyth is at the bottom of this depth chart right now is a surprise to me. And I'm curious as to why that is.
Yeah. And obviously it's the first official, depth chart. So I wouldn't make too much of it, but it is interesting that Wattenberg is second over Forsyth. But I was going to say that was my third, was the center position. But I will say that I think from the center side of things, I'm curious when it comes to Cushenberry in the standpoint of one, you can't dismiss he's having a great camp. He is having a great camp. He's playing really well.
Wow.
And
dismiss it slightly.
I know. We
being honest.
I know, but in terms of preseason, he does fit in line with the, who does this mean more crowd? It's Cushenberry. But I also think to go along the lines of that, I think if you were to say who also doesn't mean the most for, I would also lump Alex Forsyth into this as well. Because here's a guy that, to everything maybe that Lance was talking about, even though they had, say, a second round grade on him, or they wanted to draft him a little bit earlier, the draft is also a gamble, and it's a gamble that you're willing sometimes to take. And sometimes that player that you may be very, very high on may not make it to the 7th round or those later rounds. And Alex Forsyth, very luckily, made it to where the Broncos were, and they took him. So obviously that label and stigma is going to be on him for a while. But I think that if he can be able to show and prove in the preseason that he is that type of center, right, then absolutely you're going to be talking about something that we actually have a center competition. Because even dating back to OTAs, there was some rumblings about Alex Forsyth, and Brandon and I talked about it, but there were some rumblings about Alex Forsyth in camp, that Forsyth was actually playing pretty well in camp and was getting some pretty good reviews from Sean Payton and others. So in terms of a 7th round draft pick, you want to make sure you're hitting the ground running on day one, and so I think that is not out of the realm of possibility that, in terms of the steals, you're obviously Drew Sanders would fall in line with being a steal. J.L. Skinner would be falling in lines with a steal based on where and who he is. But I wouldn't even discount the fact that Alex Forsyth is falling into that line as well.
Alex
as far
Forsyth
as possible.
could be the biggest steal.
Yeah, pun intended.
If Lloyd Cushenberry craps the bed and doesn't do well, and Alex Forsythe has the ability and the opportunity to come in some of these preseason games and play well. And like the other thing I am also slightly surprised that he's third on the depth chart. We also don't really know, is he still have lingering health concerns?
That's
Possibly.
my question.
It could be that. Like, that's the only thing I can think of. Other than that, or Luke Wattenberg is just blowing him out of the water, which I just can't make myself believe that that's true.
Especially with the way he looked in regular season action.
Exactly.
And granted, that's the Butch Berry effect. But I mean, hey,
he's a backup center. I mean, I'm not expecting him to be, a Greek god out there. But Alex Forsythe, based on what I know about him, should easily be that Luke Wattenberg. Nothing against Luke Wattenberg, but like, he's good depth. But I'm just saying, I'm surprised. I feel like there has to be some other thing going on there, maybe. But I think he has the opportunity to maybe come in if Lloyd Cushenberry isn't playing great, to come in and make a case that maybe he could be the starter this year. I don't know, and I'll let you go next year, Lance, in a minute. But just to piggyback off of the end of my statement and go into what Josh is asking, like, I think it's both. I think they need to play better, and if they don't play better, then they're showing that they don't have it and they can't be the starter.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I guess my big thing is when you look at this depth chart, notice where all of the rookies are at. Is there a rookie? You know what I mean? Like, is there a rookie other than Drew Sanders?
Marvin Mims.
Well, Marvin Mims at the punt returner position, but where is Marvin Mims in terms of the wide receiver competition? Is he actually second on the other side of Cortland Sutton? No. Like you don't see any of these rookies actually up to where we think they're going to be on this roster. Like Marvin Mims is the starter at punt returner right now. Any of these other rookies?
No, you're right.
It doesn't matter. So Forsythe right now is the third center because Luke Wattenberg is a veteran and Lloyd Cushenberry is the incumbent starter.
Which is also, I think, the argument for Greg Dulcich too. Like, for an argument for Dulcich. I mean, obviously, going back to what we said about Dulcich, like, that's the other side of it we didn't touch on. It was like, obviously, Troutman came in. Well, we sort of subtly talked about it, I should say, with Troutman coming in. Troutman was the veteran, and Dulcich is entering in his second season. And I mean, may not necessarily be getting it, right away, as far as like the offense. So, I mean, makes perfect sense for him to be tied into.
Yeah.
Well, that makes the Albert Okwuegbunam position look worse.
It does. It does.
It does.
It absolutely does. Especially when you have Nate Atkins, an undrafted rookie free agent out of South Carolina, listed in front of him. Also, speaking of Albert Okwuegbunam, I have a little bit of knowledge on that one too. They were actually trying to trade him in the draft. They had a deal in place with him it was AO plus a 6 for 2 7ths from the Jaguars. Might have been 3 7ths, but they were actually working to move Okwuegbunam in the draft after they got Troutman.
Yeah,
and that's not a great package.
No,
there's no value there.
Yeah,
there's no value there.
So I'm definitely.
I don't think Does Albert Okwuegbunam stick on this roster after the preseason? I legitimately don't know.
No. I mean, like, it's like we said earlier. It's like the official takeaway of this. If you were to say, like, what is the official and say lone takeaway of the depth chart, is that Albert Okwuegbunam is so low, and because of that, you just don't see him on the roster after preseason.
I'm going to slide him in as another one of this preseason means the most to him, because
that's what I was. Yeah.
If you want any hope of staying on this roster, you got to do something. If you want any hope of going to another team, you got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
What I was going to say, and I think for Albert Okwuegbunam, here's a case where if he plays the most or one of the most as far as the players that play in the preseason,
the most snaps.
Right. I don't necessarily look at that as a positive necessarily from the Broncos perspective. So if that's a takeaway, I will say.
No.
So if you are a Broncos fan and you're watching the preseasons from 1 to 3, and Alberto Cuebanam is getting a fair amount of snaps and action from preseason 1 to 3. Don't make the assumption that because of the fact that he's playing so much in preseason, that the Broncos actually love him so much. They may like him and see what he's progressing as, but it's really about they're advertising him at that point for another football team. Because that is also true for preseason, is that they're going to advertise him so much. And also it could be a case where they also cut him early so that he can latch on to another team because he is that talented tight end.
Well, if they try to trade him, I have to imagine they're going to try again.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, and then as far as some of the other stuff,
so
I want to touch on something that Brandon tweeted. Well, that everything has been talking about, and
you're about to say what I was about to say. So
yeah, this is something that Brandon tweeted, and really everybody's been going on and on about lately, and that has to do with the field conditions.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Last night when we were on the 5280 podcast, and obviously any conversation you have in preseason, I mentioned that, I'm a fan in terms of like the preseason this year. And I say that in this year because of Sean Payton's here and everything that happened last year of playing the starters in preseason. However, I'm retracting what I'm saying for this upcoming game only because of the field conditions. Like especially with the field conditions and the way things are, I am really leery about some of these starters that are playing in preseason. And I don't think it's a given per se. It's not set in stone that Javonte will be playing in preseason 1. Peyton said ideally it would be nice to have him play in a second preseason game, which maybe he's sort of leading us on there, saying that he probably will be playing in the second preseason, which, by the way, from a Javonte perspective, that's exactly what you want. Go play in your home crowd and everything, that's exactly how it should be. And as it's working out, if he's not playing in the Arizona, preseason game, that works perfectly because he was one of the guys with those field conditions and the amount of injuries that the Broncos have sustained. That is almost numero uno on your list. But yeah, so I've retracted as far as what I've said because of the field conditions in Arizona. I've retracted what I'm saying. Like, you really should be holding off playing your starter. So I was agreeing with Brandon, what he was tweeting earlier, saying we really need to think long and hard about playing those starters.
Well, that's what I was about to say is like, what do you guys think about that? Like, do you think that, because Sean Payton has also come out and said that the field conditions have no impact on who he decides to play, which I don't know if I believe that, to be honest. Like, that seems irresponsible. There has to be some kind of, is there not a quality control thing here where the NFL will make you have a quality turf? Like, I'm legitimately wondering. I don't know.
So first to Sean Payton and how it doesn't affect, he also did kind of elaborate on that statement, how it doesn't affect what players are actually going to play, but we'll be conscientious of it when we get there and actually maybe make it.
I did see that. They're going to go out and look at it. Yeah.
Yep. They'll go look at it and see what actually happens. But his original statement was, if the field, are you concerned about field conditions and the players are going to play? No, it's not a factor. Then he followed up into that. As your point on the NFL and it's quite honestly, this is my obligatory. I'm going to shit on DeMaurice Smith in the NFLPA for not figuring out how to actually have quality field conditions, because forget Arizona. Let's talk about Miami for a minute. Let's talk about Washington, D.C. and Houston there for a while before they went to a full-blown field turf. These grass stadiums, and Mile High Stadium is a
Wasn't
grass
the Giants stadium like that too?
The Giants stadium is a turf stadium. The Giants MetLife Stadium is a turf stadium. It's a terrible turf stadium. Terrible. There was 4 different torn ACLs and a blown Achilles on the Giant stadiums in 2019 alone in the first 4 weeks of the season.
Keep track of that stuff like that blows. They have to. I mean, they do, but they don't do anything about it.
No, and why would they? When people continue to show up and watch, forget about the players, because the NFLPA and
they don't give a shit about the players.
Exactly. That's exactly right. They don't give a damn about NFL player safety. They really don't.
That's so.
They're about making money for the players, and that's all there is to it.
Well,
it's horrible. It's horrible. And hopefully Troy Vincent, hopefully a guy like Eric Winston, maybe a Brandon McManus can finally show up and actually do something too. And that's not a shot at Brandon McManus, but let's be honest here, dude. You're a representative, and the only thing you do there to do as a player rep is to tell him to not show up to OTAs and minicamp. That's all that Brandon McManus actually did as a player rep. Let's be honest.
I feel like, do either of you guys watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep.
It's that's that episode where they're like Scully is being elected as their rep in the union, and the only reason he goes is for the party subs.
Yep.
I sincerely hope that finally that DeMaurice Smith is out of the head.
I can't believe they don't
NFLPA
thing. Yeah.
Like this last collective bargaining agreement is absolutely atrocious. It's sure, you guys can smoke weed now. We're playing 17 games, and we're giving up benefits too. Like, okay, cool, we can smoke weed now, and let's have fun. Like, sorry,
right?
I don't. You're getting me on a tangent that gets me in a hot state of mind.
Well, then you have.
Let's be honest here. Like, I don't know, man. The field conditions, player safety. It seems like that's what they want to talk about. That's what they want to preach with the NFL and the NFLPA, but they never actually do a damn thing.
Oh, it's a front.
To fix
it's
it.
fake.
Absolutely it is. Absolutely it is. Because, like, okay, we're not going to have contact. We're not going to have over-exertion in weight training and on-field conditioning and stuff like that. Then we're going to go and be in 90 car collisions a day.
Yeah.
That's what they've equated a football tackle to, is a car collision.
Yeah,
and we're going to do 90 of those a day for 2 weeks and think that that's safe on players and not condition them to that. I have a problem with it all the way across, top to bottom.
Yeah.
It pisses me off, guys. I'm sorry for taking over, but damn.
No.
And then you have you're good. And then you have, Broncos ownership last year spending $400,000 to replace the field for one game.
Well, and I think that's the one thing I was going to say is, so like, you have an ownership that spends so much money
to the owners. Like,
go
ahead.
No. I was just going to say, you have an ownership group with the Broncos per se that, like, they spend X amount of money, thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars for a new field in a meaningless week 18 game against the Chargers. I wouldn't put it past. I wouldn't put it past the Broncos of even upgrading the field at Dove Valley because of the fact, of how things, may shake out field condition wise and so on and so forth. Nathan, I was going to say, Nathan brought up, this is the objective and right take. Because, it's like, it's football, you can only be so cautious. And so, and from a coaching perspective, you obviously have to evaluate the players. And so, like, you still need those reps and get the reps in, for the system. And so, and I think that's the right take. Because, like, even as a coach, like, yes, I think from the human part of this and from the human level, you are worried for guys like Javonte Williams or, any player that is coming back from injury, stepping foot on that practice field. And I guess that's the other part of this is, like, we're saying this means more for players in the preseason game, but they also will be practicing on that field as well. And so it's like, that's the worry part of that. But I think that, like, you also have to take those risks sometimes. And that's like, and when you are a football player, that is sometimes a risk you're willing to take.
Well, and Nathan is completely right. Like, I agree exactly with what he just said. Injuries are going to happen. If they happen, they're going to happen anywhere. But my only point on this is, like, why shoot yourself in the foot? Like, if you have something that's within your control to fix that can at least make a slight, like, let's say it's a 0.5% difference in the risk of injury. Right. Like, why would you not just do that? And my point about the Broncos ownership spending that money on the field, like, is that what it's down to now? Is, like, it's up to the owner to decide, I'm going to maintain my field. Like, the NFL doesn't give a shit about it. They're not like, we're going to quality control this and make sure that you have, like, everyone is playing on the same quality and even like take quality out of it. We're going to make sure that everyone's playing on the same consistent turf just for consistency's sake. But as much as that even matters, but that was my point, is like that they seem to make it's like it's on owners to make that decision, and it's not like a league thing where they have a policy about it. It just seems weird.
I'm not gonna like bag on the decision there, but when I was in high school, I laid sod and turf down. I worked on underground sprinkler stations, and we laid sod down. A week into laying new sod down on the field doesn't mean that it's a quality surface. Like there's still some time that needs to take to press that grass into the dirt. Like we're taking grass and cutting it down like 1.5 inches below the soil level to take it off, skim it down, and then lay it down into a new surface. Is that actually a quality surface to play on? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I've been on fresh laid sod. It slides around. It's not 100% perfect. It's not 100% safe. They went out and they redid that in the terms of player safety, but really, was that making that playing surface safe? And I'm not trying to like bag on that decision or bag on the people that know that, like the field crew and everything like that. They know a hell of a lot more than I do. I just know in my personal experience, walking on freshly laid sod is not something I want to play football on. Absolutely not, no question.
Levi Stadium is another one that has been under a lot of scrutiny in terms of playing field. And, and I think back to when the Broncos won Super Bowl 50, despite the fact of them playing there, the field conditions were terrible.
On
Brandon,
freshly laid sod.
Yeah. So Brandon, you mentioned about is it an ownership thing? I think the one thing that the ownership can do is if all 32 teams and all 32 owners got together and on a regular basis, on an every other week basis, or what it takes, does exactly what the Waltons did on week 18. I think that's what it's going to take, is that if you get 32 owners on an every other week basis, upgrade the field conditions on an every other week basis, like what the Waltons did in spending that amount of money, that's, I think, what's going to, because it's still going to fall on Roger Goodell and him making in the Players Association and so on and so forth, for them to, actually come to the agreement of okay, we really need to look at this as far as player safety. But if there's one thing that needs to be done, it's you also need to be pouring X amount of money and dollars to show that, hey, we are trying to show improvement to these football fields. And if it's a regular occurrence, like a meaningless week 18 game or a meaningful week 5 game or something, even against, say, the Kansas City Chiefs or the New York Jets or whoever you're playing, if it's happening even then, that just goes to show you, okay, they're really spending a lot of money to ensure that a lot of the money is going to really building new fields multiple times during a season. So I think that that's really where it would come down to, as far as the NFL, Roger Goodell, people like that, noticing that, oh, wow, they are really spending that amount of money to ensure that we have better quality.
Well, I just know the running backs in the NFL are looking at this and what the fuck? Because I told myself I wasn't going to drop an F-bomb, but there it is.
It's okay.
Because you already have everything going on with that entire position of I really don't know where that solution is with what's going on there, where NFL running backs are holding out and saying they're not paid enough and for the amount of impact they make on the game, and they're not wrong. But then NFL teams are more I'm just going to run this guy to the ground as rookie contract and then draft another one. I don't know how that's going to end, but I can't imagine that running backs are well, you're not going to pay me, but also you're going to make my career shorter, so I can't earn enough money by not caring about the quality of what we use. Anyway, I didn't realize it's going to become a whole thing, but
no, it's a good conversation. It's a good conversation.
Go ahead, Lance.
And once again, like you were saying, these running backs are all pissed off about the pay scale and how they're being underappreciated and not being paid. Once again, thank you to Maurice Smith for the rookie wage scale and how the contracts work after the first 4 years. That was something that he negotiated back in 2012, I do believe, with the last collective bargaining agreement. And they just kept that through. Here we are, guys.
Yeah. So moving on to the actual game at hand, which is the preseason game. I sent it out to you guys that like we were going to spend some time on the Cardinals, but then I realized, they really do suck and there's really not much to talk about.
I mean, again,
We're going to go out there and we're going to kick their ass. This is the way I'm feeling.
that's the whole preview. That's the whole preview.
But that said, is there a Cardinals player that piques your interest a little bit? Like, for instance, say like second-year player out of CSU, Trey McBride. What is his development? Is he even going to play? Like from the Cardinal side of that, like, are you looking out for some player on the Cardinals? And then we'll talk about the Broncos side of it. As far as tying, like, if you were to specifically call out a player of like what you're going to watch out for.
I mean, on the Cardinals side, obviously Kyler Murray is out. Like between Colt McCoy, Clayton Tune, sounds like an old Western flick. This city ain't big enough. This town ain't big enough for the two of them. Which one of them is going to win? But like, what is Marquise Brown's role in the offense? Because like, if you look at the Cardinals are down bad, guys. Like, if you look at their depth chart, it's all right. You got James Conner, who actually was pretty good for them at running back, but then it's just a bunch of dudes. Corey Clement, who's still somehow in the league. I didn't even know that. Keontae Ingram, Tyson Williams. He's kind of interesting. And then at wide receiver, you have Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, who they traded a first-round pick for, and Rondale Moore, who is also interesting. But then you got like Michael Wilson, Zach Pascal. Like, I don't know what that offense is going to look like. And Kyler Murray is obviously out. So it'll be interesting to see how they're trying to plan around that. And like, I know obviously preseason is preseason and like Kyler Murray probably wasn't going to play, but if you see Colt McCoy out there or Clayton Tune out there, that's your starter for probably the first 4 weeks. So I'm just curious to see like, what does this team do? Because, the Cardinals are in a very interesting position.
They're in a number one
franchise. Like, I don't know. I mean, they got rid of Cliff Kingsbury, thankfully, who's like somewhere living his best life in some unknown country with the extradition treaty.
He's actually in California with Lincoln Riley at USC.
Oh, I forgot about that. I forgot that they hired him, but yeah. Anyway.
So I guess he's living in California.
It's interesting to see like what's going to happen with the Cardinals offense. That's my biggest take.
So I guess my big thing is what does Paris Johnson Jr. look like going against Nick Bonito? That's a big one. Obviously, the Cardinals traded back, got Paris Johnson Jr. to he's listed as their starting right tackle right now. DJ Humphries on the left side, but that's a big thing. Is how do the depth players we talked about a little bit earlier? Jonathan Cooper, Nick Bonito, maybe Thomas Incoom. Let's see what those guys look like. But I am actually very curious as to what the backups in the Broncos secondary look like. You got Rondale Moore, who I really like coming out of Purdue. I thought that he, with the explosive ability that he has, taking the ball after the catch, he's very hard to tackle, very hard to bring down. Michael Wilson, who, despite having multiple torn ACLs at Stanford, is a very smart and nuanced route runner, arguably a top 5 route runner in this class, coming out in the 2023 class. So you're talking about those guys going against guys like Damari Mathis, guys like Jaquan McMillian, maybe even seeing a little bit of K'Wan Williams out there against Rondale Moore working in the slot. So there's some storylines there as well. Defensively, I don't give a damn. I really do not give a damn. Like, what Zaven Collins maybe on the blitz, and let's see. Yeah, like what does Zaven Collins brings? And it sounds like they're rushing him a lot from the coming off the edge more than playing him off the ball. So that's interesting to me what it looks like. Cam Fleming against Zaven Collins. If we do see that matchup, I doubt we actually do. You'll get LJ Collier in there as well. Victor Demukaje, a player out of Duke that I liked as a rotational edge defender. Maybe we'll see what he goes against. Cam Fleming, Quinn Bailey, if he does play on the outside. Like, there's a couple of things I'm really looking for. Keitrell Clark, I forgot that they drafted Keitrell Clark. Holy cow, that was my dude out of Louisville. But, Mostly I'm looking for offensive matchups. I want to see what the Arizona offense does against this secondary on this defense, and see what the Broncos are able to do with the depth players in the secondary specifically.
I was gonna say I'm curious to see like what we do against or how we fare against Budda Baker. That's like the only defensive piece that I care about on the Cardinal side, just because if he plays, that's what I'm trying to say. I guess it depends on who, again, like what's their policy on playing starters, because he is a top safety in the NFL. So if he plays, that's why I'm curious to see, what do we do against him? Like, how does that look with whoever, we're trying to target there. That's the one thing I'm interested in. But again, if he plays, don't know. He might play. Again, I mean, we just don't know.
Yeah, well, and good on him for getting his contract reworked just a few days ago, because he wasn't actually going to show up to camp. They redid his contract and gave him some more money, like less than a week ago. So, like, good for him on getting on at least securing the bag. And that to me tells me that he's not going to play in preseason. So,
yeah,
they got Isaiah Simmons at corner now. I didn't even know that.
Why? I thought. All right, so let me get my obligatory shot at Vance Joseph.
I didn't know this.
Let me get my obligatory shot at Vance Joseph here. At least that dude knew how to freaking work with Isaiah Simmons and not play him on the boundary at cornerback.
Yeah, he's the right corner now.
Speaking of quarterback, Nathan.
I'm so confused. Sorry,
Nathan asks about Riley Moss. Core muscle surgery. He's out a couple weeks.
He's not playing.
He won't play in the preseason, but he might be ready for week 1. That's funny that Isaiah Simmons is. I was looking at along the defensive line. It says David Collins kind of like, where's Isaiah Simmons? And then I get down the right corner. So if there's anything that is probably the takeaway here with Isaiah Simmons is it's at least confirmation about what his draft prospect profile looked like, which was you could put him all over the field. Because even dating back to Clemson, he did play corner, he played safety, he played linebacker, he played corner. It's not like he hasn't played the position before.
He requested a shift from the linebacker role.
Interesting.
Oh.
So either he feels really comfortable. That was when you mentioned corner, like that was like a subtle takeaway for me. It was like he had to have said something for him to move because
I told them I didn't want to play linebacker. I felt more comfortable going back to things I did in the past. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, and so that's just the thing though, is like it's almost like Baron Browning, right? Like when Baron Browning with Evero was like, hey, I'd much rather be an edge rusher than an inside linebacker. So yeah,
I mean, honestly, it might have been the contract, like it's just the contract prospects.
So can we address the elephant in the room here? That is Budda Baker, who plays the exact specific role that Isaiah Simmons would be like the perfect player to put into that role. You've already got Budda Baker, who is top 7 safety in the league in the box. Yeah. And what does Isaiah Simmons do well? He plays the role of Budda Baker. They need to find something for him to do.
Well, yeah, and and I will say he's a better safety than he is a corner. But yeah, he's definitely shown the ability to play corner. It's funny. This also falls in line with some of the things that I'm going to be watching for, which is in the sense of like, and it's not just from an entire preseason standpoint, but also from the standpoint the Broncos are playing the Cardinals. Vance Joseph is coming from the Cardinals. I am actually curious to see in preseason, because in preseason you see a lot of Manila looks from not just the offense, but the defense. I'm curious with the big Arizona, does Vance Joseph have something up his sleeve to show creativity side of things to Arizona, saying like, hey, this is like a subtle way to be like, hey, this is why, I'm not here anymore, and going off of creative looks. In essence, are we going to be seeing Vance Joseph defenses in this preseason game? Or are we going to be seeing the Ejiro Evero, Christian Parker influence meshed with the Vance Joseph defense, which is what I would like to see. As far as in the regular season, but like, are we going to actually see that in the preseason? So that is something that I'm looking for. And with it being the Cardinals and actually playing the Cardinals, are we actually going to get at least a leak or a teaser or an Easter egg of what things are going to be, coming forth, at least with what the defense will look? That's one thing. And then on the offensive side of the ball, obviously they're going to be running the football. But like, how Manila is Manila with what we'll see from the offensive side of the ball? That's kind of what I'm looking out for. We're going to be seeing a lot of runs. Are we going to be seeing some short passes? Are we going to be, seeing some things that are just extra conservative and that kind of side? So I'm curious about, and that's like an entire preseason thing. But those are the two big watches for me.
I mean, I'm down for that. I think that one thing that goes a little bit underappreciated in this matchup, and I'm not going to try to spin a narrative here or anything like that, but Vance Joseph was passed over by, what the hell is his name? I can't remember the owner's name, for Jonathan Gannon as the head coach. Like, Vance Joseph was one of the first interviews they did, and they passed over him. And now you get to see what I get to do with actual talent.
I know.
Do we actually see that? Do we actually see what happens with a Vance Joseph defense who actually has talent? He said it himself earlier the other day. This might be the best edge rushing group that he has 1 through 6. We're probably not going to see much of Frank Clark and Randy Gregory. You're going to see a lot of Nick Benito, Jonathan Cooper, Thomas Incoom, Christopher. You're going to see a lot of those guys. 1 through 6. There's 4 through 6 is those guys right there. Are we going to see a lot of Damari Mathis? I think we're going to see a lot of him. I think we're going to see a lot of Jaquan McMillan. I think we're going to see a lot of Asang Bassi. Caden Stearns, you're going to see a lot of him too as well. You're going to see PJ Locke. What do you do with those players who are arguably starters on this roster for the Arizona Cardinals? It could be.
It's an interesting twist. I know that preseason doesn't mean anything, but it's like, because it is Arizona, and because of what you mentioned, Lance, and everything, it's like, I don't know. I don't want him to leak too much, but it is an interesting human part of it where it's like, look, this is why you guys move past, and
I think the one thing you're going to see the most in terms of the leak of what the defense is going to do, you're seeing a lot of 5-man pressures.
Yeah.
You're going to see a lot of 5-man pressures, and I'm here for this. Put the offensive line back on their heels and get after the quarterback. 5-man pressures are the way that you do that. It's not a blitz if you are bringing the same amount of rushers as you have offensive linemen. It's not a blitz. You only blitz when you bring more rushers than the team has blockers, and you're going to see a lot of 5-man pressures from this Vance Joseph defense this year. And I think Josie Jewell and Drew Sanders are going to play a big part in that.
Yeah. This could be exciting. It is absolutely going to be exciting. So, Lance, thank you so much, man, for hopping on with us. It carried a little bit long, but I tell you what, you mentioned it perfectly. Anytime we have the opportunity to do crossovers like this with people from Mile High Huddle or people from, other, locations, it's a beautiful thing. I love this one. It's one of the reasons why I love doing crossovers so much. Brandon can tell you that. It's like, I love doing crossovers with people from Let's Talk Broncos, or even, people from Mile High Huddle, or, just like we are a family. I mean, it can be competitive, certainly, but like, we are a family first and foremost. And we are a family of Broncos podcasters that love our Denver Broncos and love talking about the Denver Broncos. And we love doing it with especially you and some other people, of course, down there at Mile High Huddle. So again, thank you so much for hopping on with us. Before you go, though, I know you did some teasing and plugging in for some of the articles, but once you circle back a little bit on some of those articles that you're getting ready to write or soon to be published over there at Mile High Huddle.
So the most recent one that just went up was the the comments that Sean Payton just offered up about Taylor Grimes. I just have an article right now that is supposed to be coming out either tonight or tomorrow morning about this edge rushing group, Nick Bonito, Jonathan Cooper specifically, based on the comments that Vance Joseph and Sean Payton uttered just in the past couple of days about those two development. Another big one that I did, it was actually a series that I just wrote at Mile High Huddle, was the 5 best moves that George Payton has made that could potentially save his job, the 5 worst moves that he has made that could potentially have him on the hot seat, and then the fallout of the decision to draft Pat Surtain over Justin Fields. You can find all of those articles on my Twitter account by following me at LanceS_MHH. Also, Google me. Google Lance Sanderson, Mile High Huddle. You'll find all my entire works there. We're just going to, from here on out, do a lot of preseason stuff, breaking down quotes, doing some film breakdowns and analysis. I'm going to do a lot of stuff over the course of the season in terms of matchups that I want to see the Broncos exploit and how they did actually exploit those the following week. A lot of fun. Just make sure you guys pay attention to everything I'm doing. Lance _MHH is the way to do that. And also, guys, you can find me talking Broncos football on my podcast at Dove Valley Deep Divers. That's on the Mile High Huddle YouTube page, or wherever you guys find your podcast. Subscribe to Mile High Huddle. It's a great way to find all of our content. You know, we've got my show, the Mile High Huddle podcast, Building the Broncos with Nick Kendall and Carl Dumler, Mile High Insiders with Thomas Hall and Luke Patterson as well, a couple other different shows. All of our stuff is always available at Mile High Huddle on Twitter as well. So you guys would definitely follow us and appreciate. We would definitely appreciate that. And also, you know, like Cam said, it's great to have a community in, you know, in the media, in podcast community, on multiple different websites that work collaborative and be collaborative. Like, don't be scared to get different opinions and jump in front of different conversations and throw your opinions out, because everybody that I've come across here, I've been covering the Broncos since 2018, been a Broncos fan since life began. Cam, I've known you for 10 years now. It's been a long time. And we've been together doing a whole bunch of different shows together, a bunch of different conversations and stuff like that. Don't be scared to follow everybody else. Go out there and get as many differences of opinion as you possibly can, because it makes a better environment, a better fan base, a more educated fan base. So that's the one thing that I do appreciate about joining on with you guys, joining on with the MHRT community, you know, Broncos country tonight with Benjamin Albright and Ryan Edwards, all those guys. Like, let's have some fun and let's just talk football and stop being so damn negative. Let's talk Broncos. There you go.
That's not a plug, by the way. That's not a plug, by the way, for Zach Seegers, Bree Macis, and
Zach, Joey.
It's not a plug for their podcast, but yeah, truly, like, let's talk Broncos.
let's have fun and just talk football and be more educated about everything. And I appreciate you guys. I know I went on a tangent there, but I do appreciate you guys for having me on. It's always a blast to be here with you guys, and let's do it again sometime soon.
Absolutely, man. We'll definitely have you on. And if you guys are still with us currently right now, we actually have another huge guest who is going to be on next week. And speaking of Let's Talk Broncos, Frankie Abbott will be in-house for an appearance on the Manely Broncos podcast. So Frankie Abbott will be in the building. So make sure you tune into that particular episode. And thank you again to tuning into this particular episode where we talked about the depth chart, and we really did a deep dive, pun intended, Lance, a deep dive into the depth chart, and we did talk about the preseason, and just we talked a whole lot about a lot of different things, something that wasn't even on our rundown. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Thank you guys so much, Rich, Mundungus, Nathan. First time I think I've seen you actually on the show, so thank you so much for chiming in. And to others, Josh Sherman, no relation to the Broncos guard Will Sherman, by the way. Ray, as always, thank you so much for chiming in. Avatar, I didn't get a chance to see it earlier, but congratulations and on the happy birthday, late happy birthday, and that's awesome about the Nuggets championship plaque. But Clayton, yeah, thank you so much for hopping in. everybody else that was watching, tuning in, and didn't get a chance to comment, thank you so much, as always, for watching the show. You can follow Brandon at Brandon Miller PO. You can follow Lance. He gave his Twitter just now. Myself at Cameron Parker PO. Or I guess since the cat is out of the bag, you can follow Brandon and I at Manely Broncos, since now apparently he has decided to have the account and use it too. And that is at Manely Broncos. So yeah, so make sure you follow that account at Manely Broncos. But anyway, thank you guys so much for tuning into a fantastic show. And until next time, Frankie Abbott on Manely Broncos next.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, go.